is it anyway? July? I think we're July. Welcome to the July 2025 Philmont Trek Talk live chat, where we have assembled an amazing panel of Philmont Trekkers, experienced people who are going to tell you everything you need to know, or at least some things you might want to know. Well, listen, we're going to talk about Philmont. All right. That part I can guarantee you. We're going to talk about Philmont. We have some people fresh off the trail to fill you in on what they just experienced, help give you what you need. That's always the goal. Every time we do one of these is we want to help people have the absolute best trek possible. So get your questions ready. Please keep in mind, this goes better if we have an interactive program. So as people filter in, since we've just started the live stream, we'll give a couple minutes for people to get in. But once you get here, please have your questions ready. Ask those questions. Make it interactive. It goes a whole lot better than if you count on us to make this interesting. Okay, introductions. We're to go around the horn and everyone introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Jeff. I am the, what am I? I am the proprietor of GearReport.com, the sponsor of this program and the group, and very recent former Sea Scout. Andy distracted me. He looked like he was laughing at me, and I'm sensitive, man. You got okay. I'm sorry.
We need a Kleenex.
Yeah, I was the skipper of a Sea Scout ship, but they still let me go play with the Dirt Stouts at Philmont. I've done that a few times, as a youth, as an adult. So that's my experience, which pales in comparison to Mr. T.
Darrel Tadsen, Greater St. Louis Area Council, Philmont Council Contingent Coordinator for the past decade or better. Anyways, multiple trips to Philmont. Want to pass along and give the new folks any tips, guidance we can share with them, as Jeff said, to make your trek even better. Thomas?
Thomas Thompson. I'm out of Houston, Texas. Troop 55, Assistant Scoutmaster, Venturing Associate Advisor. Just came off the trail a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, I guess. From my first Philmont. Done a few high adventures, but the first Philmont, I didn't get to do it as a youth, so that was exciting.
All right. Can't wait to hear about that. Brian?
Yep. Brian Cox. I am with Troop 715 out of Richmond, Virginia. Just came off of my fourth trek, which I think overlapped exactly with Desi's. Different itinerary, same dates. Yeah. And I finally broke my streak. I finally am 1 for 4 for returning with all scouts intact for the entire trek.
Oh, that's amazing.
Nice.
All right.
Is that me? My turn?
It's you.
I'm up. Andy Parrish from Andy Parrish Outdoors. I literally just got back from Philmont 2 days ago, so everything is fresh in my mind. I am part of Troop 152 here in the Indianapolis greater area, and been the high adventure chair for quite a few years now. So I've just finished my second trek, and I'm excited to talk about it tonight.
All right. We're excited to hear about it. Everyone's here for Desi, so just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Desi Rollins. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm from Texas, but the Dallas area. And I just got off trek on June 29th, and it was a wonderful, magical experience, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Yay!
All right. Excellent.
All right. Rob Smith. I am from the Greater St. Louis Area Council, High Adventure Chair for Troop 85 in O'Fallon, Illinois. Yes, Darrel and I are in the same council, different sides. I think he's on the better side. And I also the proprietor of highadventurescouting.com, and just took the Andy Parrish trip to Colorado this just a week ago. So if you want to know about that, you'll have to look on his website. So.
Do you get something autographed for doing that? Does he provide you with like a plaque or something?
He bought me dinner about a year ago, so
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, that's good enough.
If you want to pick my brain, I'll take you out for dinner. Yeah,
well,
that's how it works.
Now you tell me.
Otherwise, you can just follow me around base camp everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, done. All right. So let's see. Let's dive into our agenda. And
Wait a minute. One more.
Missed the
one
Mr.
more.
Iowa person.
I don't need an introduction.
Oh, that's right. Mark
I'm,
went out of order.
I'm Mark Scwheer. I'm from Iowa City, Iowa, Hawkeye Area Council. We're the ones that groomed Joe Sodawasser to go down to St. Louis and be your wonderful scout exec.
So you're the one to blame. Okay.
Yeah, it's our fault. Blame it on us. But 9-year staffer, life PSA member, and I've been on too many Philmont treks that I can't even remember. And I just love the place. PSA scholarship committee, and just all around Philmont guy.
Nice. Are you going to talk about? Did you just get back from a trip?
I just got back from what I would call the Reato trip across Portugal and Spain.
Right.
Or a Reato trek across Portugal and Spain with my wife. We did 125, 30 miles in 9 full days of hiking.
Wow.
And we had some like close to 20-mile days, and no blisters. Neither of us. Few hot spots, sore feet, really sore legs, but overall great experience. I highly recommend it.
That is amazing. That may be all the time we have to talk about it because we have a big agenda today. But while we do focus on Philmont, it's great to hear about people taking the skills you develop at Philmont and taking them around the world to explore and do cool things and meet new people and get bragging rights for crossing, other countries and whatnot. So, all right.
One thing I will add is I was getting towards the end. I thought I was going to run out of Scwheer. It was getting close. We were down to about a dozen packets left. So
yeah.
Those things that you need on the trail, they're universal.
What's something I've found with every year, I tend to suffer more when the electrolytes run out than in years before. So, yeah. All right. 2025 Trek updates. Why don't we start at the top? So, Mr. T, you usually have, if there are any official updates that were sent over, did you get any this time?
No, I did not. The only one that I did notice, one of my treks, itinerary 12-7, they moved the cons project from day 2 to, I don't know, 5 or 6 between Wakeman and Ring Place.
Yeah.
So the base camp stream restoration cons project is a resounding success.
That's what I keep hearing.
I thought we did well. I didn't know we were that good.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had over 1,400 crews or people, I guess, people signed up for the cons project.
Wow.
Hugely successful. Those that did it had nothing but rave reviews about it. Well managed, well put together, and the thing that I heard most of was it was almost instantaneously rewarding as they built the check dams in the stream. Those that were standing upstream from the check dam noticed the water immediately rising behind them. So they had an immediate, gratification for what they were doing.
Wow. A friend of mine did a lot of this, the survey and planning work for that mainly over the fall season after summer. So I'm gonna have to pass that feedback on. Good. All right. Let's see. Did I have anything? I visited since our last discussion. I actually spent a night at the PTC and a couple days wandering around, mainly just following Andy. But I talked to other people while I was there. I got a picture with Sal. That was No offense, Andy, but that was, maybe potentially the highlight of the trip was finally getting a picture with the backpacking Wookiee. So
Did
that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Did he allow you to touch the plaque?
No. And I got to tell you, I know we have a big agenda. We got a lot of stuff to cover. But one thing that I have to share is I really tried to coordinate some hijinks with Sal's plaque. Like I was hoping to get my hands on it and do kind of borderline nefarious things all around base with the plaque and get pictures so then I could post them with like ransom request type things, And what I found is they must have known I was coming because as soon as Sal hit the trail, they put it in the mail and it was already on the way back to Tampa. It was not someplace where I could put hands on it. Because if you've ever been around me in base camp, you know that I can be sneaky, So it didn't matter where they put it. I was liable to ferret it out and find it and, hope that I could get forgiveness for it later. But it was already gone, or at least that's what they told me. So
They knew you were coming and prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was like Phil Break when I'd said I'm going to crash their official, live thing. They let me come in and see how it was all set up, but then before they actually started broadcasting, they kind of tricked me into leaving the building and locked the door. So I was like, "Come on!" But it was a solid move. I give them credit for that. Okay, why don't we let's talk about some lessons learned, because I didn't really learn much of anything. With my time, I didn't actually do a trek. I picked up a couple staffers and we went and explored around central New Mexico for a few days and then brought them back. And then I left. So I'm hoping I actually had a good enough experience that I'm actually considering, if my knee holds together for the next week while I'm on another trip, that I may try to hop on a crew before the summer's over. But I'm still not sure. I'm optimistic with Brian here to give me some guidance on getting my weight down a little bit. That'll help me. But first, I want to talk. We're going to start at the top with Thomas, and I'd love to hear if you identified, like, big picture, how was your trek, and then like have you identified some positive things, negative things, anything that surprised you? Like, I expected it to be this way, it was actually that way. If I could have prepared this differently, it would have made the trek better, or whatever. That's what I'm looking for from Thomas, Desi, Andy, Brian, everyone who's just come off trail.
All right. So I guess I got on trail 615. So I've been back like 10 days. And if anyone cares, we were on 1218, which has a horrible first day, but it's brutal. I'm printing t-shirts that say I survived day one, 1218. Overall, honestly, the thing that caught me most off guard is we had an older group of youth who are all our leaders in our troop. And we have a large troop, like 180 or something. So when you have these are like all the ASPLs, JASMs, like these are really experienced guys. They've all been NYLT. 4 of them stayed after for NAIL, and they elected a crew leader who I didn't really think about it at the time, but he ended up being a little like trying to lead leaders. He had trouble. And I think the one lesson I probably would take from it is we were trying to interfere just a little bit on this issue he was having. And because of the nature of the situation and there's no gap and no escape from each other, we should have nipped some stuff in the bud a lot earlier as advisors. We didn't have a full-on mutiny, but it was headed that way. And our guys actually talked it all out around the fire, thorns, buds, and roses, all that kind of stuff. But it was an hour and a half discussion, and they sorted it out with little input from ourselves. But as an advisor, I could see it kind of not working out great. And I think we probably could have been a little more aggressive in coaching him and coaching his subordinates to kind of work together.
How
That
long
was
did
the
it
only
take- How long did it take for that to come to a head?
day 5.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and it was building. And after that, of course, we had our itinerary was very stressful. It was Baldy was day 6. It was all uphill. It was 3 days in the burn, 3 dry camps to start. So it was a lot of weight, a lot of heat. Everybody's pretty tired, even though they don't admit it. And so there was some of that to be had. One of our more insightful scouts said, don't do thorns, buds, and roses at 8:00 at night. Particularly if you're going to have a lot of thorns. Like if you think there's actual discussion going on, do it over dinner or something like that to get it away from everyone being tired and ready to go to bed. And we started doing that after our big one. So I would say I expected the crew dynamics to be a little easier because we had a bunch of leaders, but because we had a bunch of leaders, they were kind of jockeying a little bit, and it took a little while to sort it out. It's not like a normal troop thing where it's a camp out and then you have a week off and everybody kind of sorts it out. It's because you're kind of stuck with each other. It becomes a little more intense. So that was my big thorn, and it was a bud. We fixed it, and everybody had fun. I will say, before we started the trek, I'd researched. I've been on the Facebook group for years. I've done other treks, learned from those, and it seemed like on the Facebook group the discussion was, always between the Philmont way and people wanting to cook different and things like that. And I set the crew down on day 1. And I said, we're going to do everything the Philmont way, 100%. We may think something's better, whatever. We're going to do exactly the way they do it. And our crew embraced it completely. Everything was great. All the processes were great. And that was my rose at the end of the trek was, hey guys, we said we were going to do it the Philmont way. And we did everything the Philmont way. It was really enjoyable not to try to have to reinvent the wheel. And if you embrace some of these techniques and stuff, they work. There's a reason this place has been around for 80 years. So I definitely, the scouts got it. And we sent 2 crews from our unit at the same time. One was on another itinerary, and, talking to them back, I know they didn't do everything quite the way they were supposed to. I don't know if it negatively impacted them, but I know ours was just smooth sailing as far as the processes and stuff, and we learned a lot of neat stuff. What other things I learned? We were pretty well prepared. We knew we had a lot of dry camps, so everyone had 7 liters of water capacity, 6 to 7 liters of water capacity on themselves. Plus, we had some, dromedary style storage that we didn't use between camps. We just used in camp when we had to go walk half a mile to water or something like that. So even though we ran into a lot of dry camps and some big gaps without water, we never really had an issue. So I would just say 4 is probably a minimum if you're having no dry camps, but if you got any shot at dry camp, you got to be able to hold 6-7 liters. I was talking to someone on the group who was on the same itinerary, and it definitely seemed like they were running out because they didn't have enough capacity. So yeah, water capacity would be the one thing. And we were pretty well prepped. I did have one scout that, I don't know, we did a couple shakedowns. He did a backpacking trip with us last year, but somehow he ended up with a 0-degree sleeping bag and the biggest air mattress I've ever seen. And, he was struggling a little bit, and he's probably carrying an extra 2-3 pounds just in his sleep set. And I wish I'd caught it earlier. Because once you're on trail, you can't do anything about it. I don't know how I missed it, but I think in the future, I want to go through everybody's specific gear. I'm not going to tell him to go buy a new sleeping bag, but I had a 20 at home, he could have taken. So I don't think I'd want that to happen again, particularly because this particular kid was he had like a small leg injury that he started with, and he could have used an extra couple pounds off his pack. So I wish I thought that. Everything else was great. The other thing was like when I was a scout as a youth, we didn't do a lot of like rah scouting, a lot of like that, and so personally, when I get into overly scouty environments, sometimes it frightens me, and basically everything is perfect. Like as far as the traditions and all that stuff, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't, everything had a purpose, the forest fairies and all that. It all fits. Right. And exactly. Our guys were doing mountain and hill the whole time. So it was fun to watch. I really enjoyed like the traditions and some of that stuff more than I expected. I knew I'd like the programs and the singing and the whatnot in the back and the staff camps. I knew more about what was coming than most of my crew because they hadn't done the research I had, and I didn't sprinkle too much knowledge on them ahead of time. So everyone had fun, no injuries. I can't think of much else. I could talk for another 40 minutes on our trek.
So, prep, and then everyone, I'd like to hear, as far as overall crew prep or multiple crew prep or whatever you had, did you have a contract? Did you do anything for accountability? Did you have, how many shakedown hikes did you have? What did you do on them? I mean, we don't need to spend, 40 minutes with each person, but I love hearing how different crews take different approaches and sometimes have similar or, disparate results. So, yeah.
We were, I would say we were slightly underprepared. Myself physically, I lost some weight. I didn't really train as much as I needed to, but I can generally gut it out through just about everything. And I actually came off the trail feeling the best I've ever felt in the last 5+ years. We're in Houston. We don't have a lot of opportunity to climb anything. So we were climbing parks. We did a couple hikes. We could have probably done one more shakedown backpacking. We really only did one weekend of backpacking as a crew because these guys all knew each other. I kind of assumed and ultimately we were okay, but they could have used another one probably. And then physical fitness, you always end up with the guys who are cross country runners and then the guys who are video game players, right? So you're going to have some disparity in that, and they pretty much worked out exactly like that. The cross country runners, we threw some more weight on them. They had to walk behind the slower guys, but they didn't care. They all understood. We had a great crew, like cohesion as far as pace and understanding that you can't, blow the crew away and get walking off in the distance. So,
right. Excellent. All right. Now we've had a little time for people to settle in. If there are any questions, please put them in the comments. And, like Andy said earlier, who is all here. So Littleton, Colorado, Carl has joined us, headed out soon. Sunday the 13th, I think that's this coming Sunday for 12/6. That's amazing. Looking to hear how that goes for you, Carl.
Are you guys ready to go, Carl?
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, well, Thomas, I think that was a great model for everyone else to follow for how to talk about your trek, but also any other things anyone, please do that. Let's why don't we have, let's see, because all three of you on the second row here did we decide this was Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares? I don't remember.
Brady Bunch.
Everyone on the second row just came off trail, right? Okay. So how about this, Brian? Why don't you do double duty here? You can talk real quick about the Philmont, and then maybe dive into your trek, and then we'll work our way across.
Cool. So start with the prep stuff. Very brief background. In college, I hit 350 pounds. So at one point, I was considerably larger than I am now and realized, hey, I've got to do something to get this down. Now, a lot of this was prior to Philmont being even an idea, but the stuff I did really still applies. And a lot of that, really what it boils down to is, and I know this is going to be depressing to somebody, eating better. Sorry, no magic bullet. The good thing there, though, is if you can pick a thing to do for each of those, it'll probably work if you stick with it. So the eating right, I did Weight Watchers, I did paleo, I did low fat, I did counting macros. All 4 of those work. One of them for me was less unpleasant than the rest, and that's the one I stuck with. I've tried running. My knees are terrible. I've tried CrossFit. And the thing that I have finally now for the last 2 years really stuck with is effectively rucking, which, shocking, is walking around with a pack on. Believe it or not, prepping by walking 5.5 miles with your dog every day wearing a 45-pound pack kind of prepares you for doing 5 to 6 miles with a 30-pound pack. Even though the elevation's not the same in my neighborhood that it is, at Philmont, I think I'm at about 125 feet where I sit right now. So not really a whole lot of elevation. We are sort of close to the mountains though, so we can get up there occasionally. And being able to, talk to some of our scouts and some of our adults, there was definitely one advisor in particular that I was able to have that conversation with, of like, hey, of the mark right now, what are you going to do? And, being able to talk him through, here's what will probably work for you. And sure enough, a month before we were going, I was driving home and I saw him walking his dog while he was carrying his pack down the street, because he only lives half a mile from me. And we had a scout do the exact same thing, prepped. He started wearing his pack. He's like, this looks so goofy. You know what? It absolutely does look goofy. There are people in my neighborhood that know me as the guy with the dog in the pack. They don't know who I am, but I'm the guy with the dog in the pack. So that really is a lot of what that prep looked like.
Gotcha.
Whether it was the initial drop from 350 down to 169, which, yes, I was half the man I used to be, which is a fun joke.
Did you want me to share that picture that you sent?
You are welcome to.
Okay.
It's now dated. Even the 35 years old is 14 years ago. But those are both me, and that's part of the reason that facial recognition software in airports doesn't work with my passport.
Brian, we had a guy in our troop that in 2022 had the same issue.
Yeah.
And, he dropped almost, I think we gave him an award for dropping a person before he went. And I told him 2 years before, I said, hey, he said, yeah, I've been reading. I said, okay, you just got to be direct. So that's the way it is. I'm sorry I jumped in there. So
no, you're completely okay.
I haven't been this year, so
that really is one of the things of like, if you don't stick with it, you're gonna revert. So unfortunately, I did find I did also prove the yo-yo effect of 350, 169, 68 or so, 260, 180, 220. I've been idling at about 195 for 3 or 4 years now, so I think I figured it out. Finally got it through my skull of what I have to do to. Unfortunately, I can't eat like the 350-pound guy, although I like trying. I am pretty sure that eating like a raccoon is my superpower, and that helps on treks. We to move on to the trek specific stuff, we did 12-13. We had 3 crews from my troop. We had one that was almost entirely Eagle Scouts and people that had been before. So similar to what it sounds like Thomas had. We had one who no one in that group had been before, but they were almost all track and field people, with 1 or 2 exceptions. They were all, runners and stuff like that. And then my crew was the youngest crew. And I was the only one with any experience in there. And honestly, that was the hardest part for me. For some reason, wrapping my head around, I know how to do this, why don't you know how to do this, was really hard for me this time. To the point that one of the other advisors looked at me one day. I was like, dude, you've got to chill out. I'm like, okay, that means I need to go take a nap and I'll be better in the morning. And I literally slept for 10 hours I slept for 3 hours, got up, ate dinner, went back to bed for 7. I was much better the next day. So,
I want to build on that point real quick because I think we have a great opportunity to help people. Had you guys, the adults in your crew or the assembled adults for your multiple crews, had you set any expectations with each other for like holding each other accountable and like, hey, if we see you doing, if we see you trying to be the crew leader, we're going to say something and, pull you aside? Or was that kind of an organic thing?
A little bit. So the first crew, all 3 adults had been before. So and they're all very easygoing people. So I'm not really sure what they did. The second group, none of the 3 had been before. But only one of them is a really super type A person, and the other 2 are really like roll with it. So that probably is fine. For my crew, it was me, a Marine who is now an attorney, and a mechanical engineer. So some very kind of type A people. So the biggest thing I did for that was telling the other guys, like, hey, if I need to back off, tell me I need to back off. And they did. And saying to our ranger on day 1, I know this is my 4th trek. I'm going to try to shut up. If you need me to shut up, tell me to shut up. And then telling the Marine when the ranger starts teaching navigation, just walk away. If you need to correct it 3 days later, go ahead. But that's the ranger's time. Don't do that. And he didn't have to correct anything, but he did teach our scouts how to actually measure on the map with the compass and do the calculation from centimeters to kilometers to miles. After the day 6 to divide, there is a route that'll take 4 miles, but the route that's described over Bonito and Big Red is more like 7.
Yeah.
And after we found that out the hard way, not by calculating it, every single night, one of the scouts was taking the compass and measuring the track and saying, oh, this is a little over or a little under. In the case of the Tooth Ridge one, the first crew that we kept referring to as the Eagle crew, because of course we did. Trek 1219 is Clark's Forth and Tooth Ridge on 10 and 11 as well. For some reason, that Tooth Ridge day is 7.1 on itinerary 1219. And it's 5.9 on 1213, even though it's the exact same track spot. So, having the ability to do that measurement was really beneficial.
I think it's shorter because you're supposed to take the zip line down.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Where was that?
It's over by the escalator.
I don't know, but Tooth Ridge between Schaefer's.
You can only do the zip line if you have a Crazy Creek chair.
I mean, we are awful close to Summit here in Virginia, so like we're familiar with the zip lines.
Yeah.
Yes, they need one on Baldy.
That'd be a nice zip line.
That would be amazing.
My knees are terrible, and I will still walk down over taking a zip line off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably the big thing, was being able to say to the other advisors and the ranger of like, hey, I know my temper gets short on day 4 or 5, but any day it happens, tell me I'm being a bonehead. And then unlike Thomas, some of our scouts just never got it. on day 12 when we were taking the bear ropes down on Tooth Ridge, there was a bag of trash on the ground before any of the bear bags came down. And I'm like, hey, it's not like we don't have bears here in Virginia. They know that. They know better. They just decided that was good enough. And I don't.
That sounds like our other crew. And our other crew's like, we weren't worried about bears, but they saw 3 bears. Like we saw 0 bears, but they saw 3. And I'm like, you guys aren't correlating this very well.
Yeah. When I was like, seriously, guys, I saw a bear in this campsite last year, and they're still just, it'll be fine if we put trash next to the sump. Well, no, it won't. It was, thankfully, but no, don't do that.
All right.
I probably should pass over to Andy.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for both of those updates. And before we get to Andy, let's catch up on some of the comments that came in. Carl, maybe ready? I think that was the response to "Are you ready yet?" is for your trek was a maybe, and
correct answer is hike on. I think.
Yeah, I asked it wrong. I apologize. Is anybody not ready? I said, "Are you ready?"
Hike on.
I should have learned.
Right.
Even in Colorado, we use that term every single time we left. So
yeah, I like to see that they're still out there getting their shakedowns in, and they are practicing all of the methods they're going to use. I think that helps because the ranger's going to teach you everything, but they can only pour so much in the pot for you, so to speak. At some point, the more you've already learned and kind of internalized in your prep, the easier it's going to be to get the nuances. Let's see. Oh my goodness. They got 11 plus miles for their Baldy summit. Yeah. Baldy days can be rough. The altitude is going to kick your butt in addition to the miles. So yeah. Yeah, it is a long day. All right.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah. Is that what you did, Andy? Did you embrace the suck?
We did. That was actually one of our mantras the entire time. We
started
started saying that in Colorado a couple years ago, especially climbing the 14er. But we brought that to Philmont as well. Embrace the suck. So getting the right
talk
frame
a
of
lot
mind.
about the 3 types of fun. Level 1 fun while you're doing it. Level 2, it sucks, but then it's fun later, and then just level 3. So.
Level 3.
There's a lot of level 2 during the days.
Oh, okay. Level 4, you get back and you forget about all the crappy time. Yeah.
What itinerary were you on, Andy?
7-9.
Oh, a 7-dayer.
We did a 7-dayer in the South Country this time, which is nice because last time I did a 12-day in the North Country, all the way up to Ring Place and White Man Vega. So this was really nice to get to see South Country and end at our last night was in Schaefer's Pass, and then do the Tooth Ridge, stopping at Tooth of Time, hanging out there, and then hiking right into base camp was
the Trail of
pretty
Tears.
cool.
Yep.
So for us, some of the things that I look back on and I think of, like, what advice would I give to crews that are going out there? Crew dynamics is definitely going to be a big thing that you're going to have to watch for. We mentioned earlier talking about the crew dynamic amongst the boys, but I think it was also a big one amongst the parents. We had I kind of laid back on this one because I was the lead advisor last time. So I gave our Scoutmaster the opportunity to be the lead advisor on this one. And I just said, hey, I'll be in the background if you need anything. And I noticed pretty quickly just the dynamic of the group. I was the only one out of the boys and the adults that had been there before. So it was new for everybody except me. And I knew I didn't want to be very hands-on. I wanted to kind of let the trek come to us. But I also noticed pretty quick that our Scoutmaster was, very anxious about it just going well. And Did we have enough prep? And were all of our ducks in a row? And all of those kind of things that we had planned and trained for a year to do this. Yeah, I could just tell that was weighing on him. So talking to the other adults, hey, we're going to have to help take some of the load off of his shoulder, so that he doesn't have the weight of the world. Like, we were having that conversation in base camp before we even left, just because, he was in charge of making sure we were everywhere that we needed to be, leading up to this trek. And I really wanted our crew leader to be the one to do as much of that possible within reason. So I had conversations with both the lead advisor and the crew leader about, asking for help if you need it. But we're going to defer to you guys, and here's how the dynamic. So we kind of, I kind of set the table before we got going of just how we hoped it would all play out. But even on trail, there was a few times where you kind of have to be that friendly reminder of, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, we can take a step back. Let's watch them succeed or struggle or whatever it may be. And I thought we had, group of letting that happen, but we had a few moments where a couple of the guys wanted to step in and kind of micromanage when it might not have been appropriate. And it was still, I only step in when I think we're getting to danger stage of, hey, this is a safety issue. This is we'll let everything go for a while, but once it gets too far, okay, I'm the guardrails. That's kind of how it is. Otherwise, you're going to drive the bus. And there were a couple times I had to step in, and it was just to say, hey, we gotta take a step back or whatnot, give a little bit of coaching advice. The only thing that I had to do on the boys' side was, we had a pretty old girl. So, doing Trail Peak and doing Black Mountain and, doing Tooth of Time and doing Schaefer's, all of those on our condensed, 6-day trek, 7-day trek is a lot. So we had to really work on pacing with them. The first couple of days we were, you go up Trail Peak, for example, and we did the bulldozer side, which there's no switchbacks. It's just straight up. And it was really tough on the adults, and the boys were getting spread out. And even the boys had to stop a dozen times going up this mountain. And we said, if you guys would just slow it down just a hair, a step or two below your pace, you would only stop once or twice going up the mountain, and we would all stay together. Why don't we try that on the next go round? So the next go round, when we did Black Mountain, which is one of the toughest climbs in all of Philmont, that's exactly what we got. We got very few breaks, except when we came across like picturesque overlooks. The group stayed together. We all made it to the top together, and everybody's reaction was, gosh, I think Trail Peak was harder than Black Mountain. And I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's the other way around. It's just the experience was that much better because their pacing was better for the entire group. So, other things preparation wise, we got dumped on at the bottom of the river before we made the climb up to Schaefer's Pass. So that part of the map, we're sitting down at the bottom, we're eating lunch, watching. You can't really see the sky very well because you're in the cavern. And the only thing that came across my mind was, hey, we got to keep an eye out for, flash flood conditions and have an escape route and things like that. Yeah. So talking to the boys about that. But, we ended up hanging out under the tarp for about 2 hours, just while we got hailed on. The boys were singing songs and having a good old time, soaking wet. But some of the people were surprised maybe that their pack covers weren't as waterproof as they thought they'd be, or their rain jackets weren't quite as waterproof as they thought they'd be. And, you hope you flush some of that stuff out on the practice hikes. But that's a section of gear that I really want to coach people to take seriously and make sure, if you're going to get rain gear, make sure it's rain gear, make sure it's been tested. Even, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go get the cheap Frog Tog stuff that is waterproof and is going to work, but, some of that, we had one of the boys in particular that ended up bringing something that I wouldn't even consider it a rain jacket. So, you know, you kind of had to watch then for, okay, is all the rest of your stuff dry? I kept telling them down there, if we get up to camp and any of your stuff is wet, your bedding, your sleeping bag, that kind of stuff, I need to know that immediately. Okay, we're not going to mess around on that kind of stuff. We had issues on our last trek. So, you know, those kind of safety issues. But overall, other than that, I mean, the boys did really well. It was really great to see them work through the challenges that they had. The dynamic was great. All these guys had been to Colorado for a 4-day trek last year or 2 years ago that I had put together, that Rob went on this year.
Last week.
Yeah, last week. So they were a veteran bunch, and I think the preparation paid off. Other than a few hiccups, it was pretty minor, and the weather for the most part was pretty good. We had temps one night. The coldest it got up for us was 41 degrees. So, you know, that's great. We were completely prepared for the cool weather. We never got anything below freezing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. That was a really nice summary of your trip. Thank you. Appreciate that. And that looks like a really neat trek, but man, it was 11.1 plus the optional trail peak, right? Yikes.
Yeah.
That's a big day for 4 days in. So I was happy to see you there early to get an additional acclimation day to make that a little easier, you know.
That helped us do the conservation project. So we got to do the building of the wetlands area there by base camp, which was nice because then we didn't have to do the stuff up at Beaubien.
Right.
Yeah, I'll add on the early day thing. Our unit goes every year, and we have a lot of institutional knowledge. No one in my unit's ever come a day early, and I decided we've come early to Colorado and stayed somewhere else, but no one's gone to Philmont the day early. And we did the day early in base camp and loved it. Like, it just made that first check-in day so easy.
Yeah.
That I'm going to recommend it to the rest of our crews for eternity. With the other crew, the guy had come before and he was kind of set in his ways. So he stayed at the Hikers Inn in Cimarron like he did last time. And our crew went to Philmont, you know, and they were fine, but just so nice for that. Like, that check-in day is so smooth.
Yeah. The only thing that was weird about it is we didn't get a ranger until the second day. So you're at base camp and you're like, what do I do? Usually by now we've been assigned a ranger and, you know, you're going through a checklist. So we went over to the museum. We did a tour of the Villa Philmonte, you know, and then we were able to check off a couple things the first day without a ranger, so that when the ranger came, we're like, oh no, we already did IDs. No, we already did, you know, registration. No, we already, and he's like, okay, we're halfway done with the list. Let's keep going.
We didn't get in. We got in at like 7 p.m. the night before, but we stayed there that night. So it was nice.
All right. Sorry, I've been over here on the other screen trying to find a specific picture to put up. I found it, but it was too small. I'm trying to find the big version of it. There it is. All right. So I go to share screen and do that one. See all this drama to show you one picture. It's proof that Andy did a museum tour. Here he is in the orange shirt. Yeah.
Nice.
He was being stalked. That was a true story.
Every time I turned around, Jeff was there.
Yep.
I don't know. The one time I saw Andy, he was in the tot.
Yeah. That's the first time I ran into him.
I heard him and I turned around like, I know who that guy is, but I've never met him.
One time I saw Jeff, he was waiting for me in the advisor's cabin. I'm not sure what that was all about, but
okay. Speaking of which, all right, let's not, I don't want people patterning me or anything, but Yep.
yeah.
Me and Andy and Sal in the advisors lounge, by the way, with the beautiful blue and red lounge chairs in the background. Yeah,
We're so comfortable.
Super comfortable.
right. All right. So a time check. Darrell keeps sending me messages with how much time is left. We can go. So yes, we try to hit an hour. We can go over an hour if people want to keep talking and people want to keep listening. But we do try to keep it close to that hour. So we have kind of shortchanged Desi a little bit. So we'll go ahead and go over as long as you want. Talk as long as you want. But let's see. What was I going to ask? Did you get the additional acclimation day since we were on that topic? Did you get there a day early?
Yes, we got there. So our start day was the 17th. We got there on the 15th, and we did the stay and play at the training center, which was amazing. I highly recommend that, especially we're coming from Texas, so we wanted to get acclimated, and so when we got the email about the stay and play, and it didn't take much convincing for our crew to say yes to do it, but we got to eat over there, and then we could go across the street to base camp to do different things, but they even did our med checks there at the training center, so that was one less thing that we had to do. So that was nice. And and the tents were great, like kind of like the base camp tents, except they have electricity, which means they have a lantern and an outlet, which, hey, I like it. And then it had like a little shelving unit you could, like hang your Class A shirt and stuff like that. So we had 8 of us come from, the Dallas, Frisco area. And then we had 4 guys joining us from Missouri, and they connected with us on the Philmont Trek Talk Facebook page. So that works. And they had people that had to drop out of their trek. And at the time I had posted, I needed another adult advisor because the third one of ours dropped, but then we got a third one out of, completely random thing. And then, the guys from Missouri contacted me, and so it just worked out. So we actually had 5 advisors and 7 scouts. So we had the 4 guys from Missouri, 2 dads, 2 scouts, and their ages were about the same ages as our guys. And so they got there on the 16th, and they brought them right to us. And as much worrying as I did about us getting along and them being, serial killers or something, I did ask, and they told me they weren't. So that's good. But they just gelled, I mean, there was a little bit of storming, just because you're together 24/7 for 12 days, and but for the most part they got along beautifully. We did have, as far as the scouts, one young lady in our crew, she had been to Philmont before, and then one of the Missouri dads had been. The rest of us were complete novices, so it was a learning experience for all. I started doing monthly hikes, I guess June of last year. My son and I would do them, and then we did a shakedown over a few days over at Guadalupe Mountains National Park. I experienced altitude sickness, which was super fun. And then thankfully I did not have that issue at Philmont because I learned things. And so, and then we did a couple of shakedowns closer to here, but gave us some decent elevation, but mostly what my son and I did, and I posted a lot of pictures of us doing it, parking garages, and put on our packs and went up and down the stairs and ramps. And I was telling my son, we were doing the ramps And I'm like, okay, future us is going to thank us when we go up Baldy. And you know what? Baldy still kicked our butt. However, we did it, and I think how much, I mean, can you ever be prepared enough? No, but I think the work that we did helped, So we did Trek 12-8. And what, yep, there's me. And I decided on a date. I brought, I guess, one thing that I would leave was I brought 2 sets of contacts and my glasses. Decided my second day on the trail that I wasn't going to get my fingers clean enough to put on my contacts. So that was waste. So I wore my glasses, and you know what? That's okay. And so that was probably the big thing. And then when we got to base camp and we check in, I'm a vegetarian, so I had a lot of food substitutions, and I did exactly what they told me to do, where you go in and you type in the substitutions, you print out the labels, and you have the bags. And I had my 30 bags of stuff, and the people at all the people that I know were wonderful. The guy at logistics was like, thank you for bringing everything labeled and in bags. And I'm like, but you said to, and so I thought that was interesting that people don't necessarily do that, because I'm like, but we didn't necessarily do it as a crew, but we watched the preparedness seminars, which helped alleviate a lot of my fears, because I tend to overthink things. And I was like, oh, well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And you know what? It's okay, But then once we checked into base camp and we did that opening campfire, and I saw, I got to see the tooth of time, the peak at the time. I was just like, well, this is going to be amazing. And it was, it was one of the hardest things I've done. And I say that as someone who's given birth to twins. Yeah, but it was wonderful. And I want to do it again. Not right now, but, absolutely. And we'll say so as far as our specific trek, there was more hiking on roads than we had thought.
What number did you say you did again?
12-8.
12-8. Okay. I thought
so we were north. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I said we got to do Baldy, and as scared as I was about altitude sickness, I guess just the way that our itinerary was structured, I didn't have any issues. But again, I made sure to eat a decent breakfast and drink a lot of water and drink electrolytes and just, take breaks when I needed to. And so I was probably the slowest one on our, but they knew that I like, okay, I'm not fast, but I will get there. It's like, I may have to call for a break. Okay. Get a couple sips of water. Okay. Take a couple bites of food, take a deep breath, embrace the suck, and go, I think another day that was hard was day 5 was going to Dean Skyline, because that was 7 miles uphill. And that's a dry camp, so we had to take water, and that was a food pickup. And that was one where we were going on all these switchbacks, getting up there, and I'm pretty sure I died somewhere in one of those switchbacks, and my body just hasn't quite figured that out yet. But the view at the top was amazing. And I will say, there were some things that, I had to think about as a woman, in the wilderness, that the guys didn't necessarily have to think about. But you know what? We did it like an example, they had an open air latrine, and they all had no issues with it. I used it once, and I'm just like, yeah, no. And after, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go find a rock, you know. But you know, it was great, and I said the you know, the programs were amazing. They really enjoyed the atlatl throwing, and that was at Indian Ridings, was fantastic. Pueblano, our ranger really talked up the campfire there, and the scouts were like all in. It was great. It was like they said, you know, after the campfire, like, okay, well, the campfire's officially finished, but we're gonna hang out here and sing some more songs. And the adults all went back to the campsite, but all the scouts were like, oh no, we want to stay. And so I have a picture of them all sitting on the front row watching, you know, and listening to them singing. And I was just like, I love that they got into it so much, you know. And
we were in Poblano the same night. I met Desi, and our guy, that was the best campfire. It was amazing. Our guys are still talking about it. And just like she said, they stayed after, and it was amazing.
I hope that anyone listening who hasn't been out with their crew yet, I know, especially the adults are tired and like, please just go to bed. The after shows are amazing. Like, I've never been to an after show at a Philmont Stafft camp that wasn't like better than the actual show.
Yeah.
It's so certainly if it can fit into the schedule anyway at all, please allow them to do that, because it's really, really neat.
Mm-hmm. And it was, we did have our young lady had to step off trail for a couple of days due to a medical issue, but she got to come back, and that was fantastic. And I will say our crew leader tended to kind of lean on her because she had been before. And when she had to step off, he really had to step up, and he did beautifully. And I told his dad, you know, as we're driving home, I'm like, you're not going to recognize him when he comes back. But I will tell you, you know, once we got back to base camp and checked in, and I took the best shower of my life. And I was excited because I thought I got a little bit of a tan. I did not. It was dirt. But I will say our crew was amazing. You know, I'm not a large person. And even training with, you know, a 30-pound pack, which for me is about what they told me to do. I don't know if it was the altitude or what, but after our first night, one of the other advisors comes up to me and goes, okay, Desi, you know, you're carrying too much weight. And I'm like, but I got everything on the packing list, and just, you know, and I said, so here's what you're going to do. And so I got up the next morning, gave this person my tent, gave this person, you know, some of my food, gave this, and it's just like we help each other, you know. And I carried crew gear such as toilet paper, very important, and the lighters, you know, and it was like we all did our part, and it was neat. Like, we'd be going down some big rocks, and of course the scouts are much taller than me, and they'd be scampering, and I'm like, okay, now hold on a minute. Now my legs don't quite go that way. And it's like, okay, Mrs. Rollins, you're going to step here, and then you're going to step here. And it's like, and it was wonderful, you know. And I said, it was hard and it was wonderful. And I got frustrated and mad and sad. And I can't tell you how many times I cried, tears of joy, tears of anger, tears of, you know, I mean, calling my husband while sitting on top of Baldy, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. It's just like, and can someone please send a helicopter to get me off this mountain, because it is just, you know. But just telling my son, it's like, we did this, you know, and I'd never backpacked before or anything So this was just like, holy mackerel, we did this, And I said, it was just truly a magical experience. I can't wait to go back. And even my son, I asked him, and he kind of figured out about halfway through backpacking's not his thing. And I said, well, that's fine, but you got to finish. And he did. And I'm already like, okay, so do you want to go back? If I asked him on the trek, he's like, no. I said, okay, and then like a couple days ago, I'm like, so do you want to do another trek? Maybe. But he is talking about staffing. He liked to do it like campfire stuff. I'm like, all right, you know what? That's okay. You can do that too. So, but yeah, I loved it. It was great. It was hard, but it was great. So, yay, Philmont.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, another great success story.
I wanted to ask Desi about integrating with that other unit, because we have a cavalcade slot next year, and I have 4 units coming from like 4 little groups assembling. So did you do any like integrate them in your Zooms or your whatever? Or?
We did. Like there was one time we were practicing setting up our dining fly, and we had them like Zoom in like at our crew meeting, and so they got to meet us that way. That was like really what we did. A lot of emails back and forth, Facebook Messenger, text messages, but really we lucked out, because you never quite know. And, trust me, I worried about it enough for all of us.
I have done the Philmont Free Agent thing 3 times now. And the last time I met the crew at the Welcome Center, the time before that, I drove to Ohio and got on the train with them. So I got to know them on the way through Chicago and down to Raton and then to the ranch. But what I have found, just in case anyone is wondering about, man, should I do something like that? What's the saying? Familiarity breeds contempt. So when you don't know people, that initial getting to know each other period, people tend to be more polite. Like I saw less issues on the trail, and plus I had crews use the fact that I wasn't going to be around after the trek. Like if they needed a heavy, I could be the heavy. So I think there are some real benefits to, and I wouldn't take away going with my son and his troop. But honestly, that was probably the least enjoyable trek. I loved the time with him, but some of the dynamics of people who've known each other for years were kind of unpleasant, and they just weren't there on the ones I did where I didn't know anyone. So that was kind of neat.
I even saw that last year. I did a council contingent, and this year was with the troop, and I had a much harder time with the kids that I've known for 2 and 3 years than I did with the kids that I'd known for 2 and 3 months.
Yeah.
I had an advisor a couple of years ago who had the youth, didn't know each other. They came from several different troops. And afterwards he said the beauty of that was they didn't know the hot buttons of the other people to push and get them PO'd and get them jacked up.
Yeah. I've witnessed that as well. Both sides of that. So yeah, absolutely. And Desi, I want to share with you, since you shared about your son. My son in 2017 was not sure he was ever going to go back to Philmont. He did not. Backpacking wasn't his thing. He's grown a lot. He was young, and physically, I don't think it was the best time for him to go. But he went and he made it. Every day he said he couldn't do it. Every day he did it, and he got a lot. It changed his life. But him a couple weeks ago at the campfire at Clark's Fork. And we didn't trek. We went and we were visiting people, but and they were kind enough. I know enough people that I was able to get out to a campfire They were very gracious. And being in that scenario, if he can fit it in career wise, I think he will go back. So
Yeah.
I would certainly encourage. I know lots of staff. I know Mark would tell you because he was on staff for 1.5 bazillion years. It's an amazing experience. I've not done it, but it can certainly. He may not have had the perfect experience because he doesn't love backpacking, but there's so much. If he liked the general environment, I would 100% encourage anyone who's thinking about doing it. It's going to be a ton of work. You're going to be days you hate it, I'm sure. But overall, I've heard very few staff that have had negative experiences on the big picture.
Well, and with Jack, he barely was old enough. He turned 14 like beginning of June. Barely finished 8th grade, so he's young.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's got time, but it's
Sure.
like there are other ways to get there, and I'm not opposed to staffing either.
Yeah.
So,
I'm trying to figure out how I can pull that off.
Yeah.
I'm also not sure my son's going back. He was 18. So he's 18, so he made his bed and he lied in it when I said, hey, you're going to need to work out a little bit more. And it didn't happen. So,
yeah.
But I think he might come back. He might do cavalcade next year. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Hey, Andy, I'd like to ask you, you've done a 12-day trek and a 7-day trek. There's been discussion, both ways on that 7-day trek. You kind of barely get your feet underneath you and know what you're doing, and then you're off the trail. How would you compare a 12 to a 7-day?
Yeah, there's definitely that side of things that I remember it being explained to me, really things start to get interesting around day 9 and 10, is kind of how it was explained to me before I went on my first trek. And I think there's definitely something to that. There's, it's more of an endurance test, and then more things come up psychologically, just dealing with being wet, being cold, being tired, all those kind of things. And then how do you adapt and deal with that you go through? So I definitely think there's a ton of value in doing the longer ones if you can absolutely do it. How I would argue for the shorter ones is, I know there's a huge contingent of adults that might only be able to get a week's vacation, and then weekends, to get away, and you really do get a lot of flavor, in that short window. And I know all the dads that went, this was the first time, this is the only experience that they had. And they were just raving about their experience. Now, we picked one of the hardest treks in the 7-day window, and the boys added like every single program that they could figure out how to do over that period of time. So we were, it was funny. We were standing next to a group in the cafeteria when we got back to base camp, and we both had light blue trek shirts with the map on the back, and they had a 9-day trek and we had a 7-day trek, but our mileage was about the same. And then we added more. So I think theirs was a 40-mile trek and ours was a 39, but we did 46. With all the extra stuff that we did. So we looked at, hey, it's like doing a 9-day trek and then scrunching it into a 7-day window. So we loved it. We absolutely really enjoyed doing the 7-day trek, having the extra day at base camp, getting to go see the stuff around base camp, the Villa Philmonte, the Scout Museum, those kind of things. I think really doing the conservation the day before in base camp was really nice. So, so much crammed into such a short window. And if that's all you can get away, you can get a great Philmont experience in those shorter treks. But there's a different animal, completely to do the 12-day trek. So if you could do those, it's a great challenge. It's a huge accomplishment, but you're going to get a ton, even just doing a 7-day trek.
Okay.
Interesting.
Seems like 9 might be the sweet spot.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done that yet. So maybe I'll go back and try and figure out how to get on a 9-day trek.
Yeah, the only thing in the 9-day, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. It was said, well, because of the adults. Well, now you still got to take a week and a half vacation. I'm not sure that's a big selling point.
It's like I tell my scouts, you got to have your priorities straight. Scouting, school, family, sports. Scouting's always up here.
And the great
only
thing,
an hour a week. It's only an hour.
It's our weekend.
The great thing on any trek when you summit Baldy, from there, it's all downhill.
Yeah, ish. Yeah.
I don't know, that all downhill Tooth of Time Ridge, that was, even though it was all downhill, that was a pretty brutal section of trail.
Sideways, I think.
Yeah.
I've heard.
Part from Schaefer's to Tooth is like, boulder scrambling.
It's
Yeah.
awful.
There's not much.
My ankle still hurt from the Baldy downhill, from just
Yeah.
like
Oh gosh,
articulating
yes.
the
Yeah.
whole way down.
I still think Tooth Ridge is harder than coming off of Baldy.
Could be. All right, here's a question. Show of hands. Who took a backpacking umbrella? Anyone? One. So
I
and
almost did. I thought about it.
I asked
Everybody was jealous about it. So all the
Sure.
scouts, when they were under the tarp and I'm sitting under the umbrella.
Did you
You
use it
never
for
rained
shade?
on trail
Too,
for
so
us, so.
you needed something for your camera. So
Yeah.
Well, that way I could clip it to my shoulder pad, my shoulder strap. So it's hands free. So then I could still film and use a trekking pole or help or whatever. So
Yeah. Did you use it for shade or just for rain and hail?
I used it just for rain and hail.
Wow.
So we had enough. We didn't get that much, but we had 2 days where we got hail. Enough to have a snowball fight, kind of thing. Hours later, it was still laying around. Sun on the Tooth Ridge, especially towards the end. But I wear a long sleeve hoodie, sun shirt, so I don't really need it. I hiked in shorts and used a little bit of sunscreen. I only had to put it really on my legs and a little bit on my face. So it worked pretty well for that. The one thing that I was really surprised about that we didn't have on the last trek that we did on this one, we had a major windstorm while we were at Schaefer's Pass. We were just sitting in the tent, and I really thought, this is going to pull the stakes out of the ground. The wind was, 40 to 60 mile an hour gusts. It was 5 or 6 hours of that night. So that's a new weather pattern that I can add into the Philmont experience. Yes, windstorm. I've done that too.
Yeah, it seemed this year from treks I've talked to with and myself being out there for 2 weeks, the weather this year was just different than previous years. It's been wetter for sure and a lot cooler.
Yeah, very, very much so. Like we had, now we weren't super high altitude for a lot of it, other than the climbing of the peaks. Most of our camps, I think the highest camp we had was 9,300 feet. And most of the camps we had were all under 9,000. So, on previous stuff, we've had some that have been much higher elevation and cooler at night, but really hot in the day. Ours was really comfortable. It was like 65 to 70 degrees almost every day we were there until the Tooth Ridge, where as we were getting down into base camp, it was getting into the 80s.
Right.
Otherwise it was really comfortable. 41 was the low, but most nights it was like maybe a touch below 50 degrees. So really comfortable sleeping weather and good, cool hiking weather so far.
Okay, I should have made the last call a few minutes ago. If you're still following along with this and you have any questions, comments, missives, whatever, toss them in the comments real quick.
2 minute warning.
Yeah, something like that. So I'm looking over the
I had
itinerary.
one
real
thing to
quick.
add real quick that I forgot on my initial thing. I wasn't aware that you could change your itinerary, and we figured this out on the middle of our trek. So our last night was supposed to be Coyote Howl, which is like a 1,000-foot climb or whatever out of Indian writings, and dry camp, and we were told along the way that it probably wasn't worth the hike because we basically had to go up there and come back down. So we called logistics whenever we got a cell coverage somewhere after Baldy, like 3 or 4 days out, and they changed us to Indian writings. And so I wasn't aware that was possible. Then we basically, every 1218 crew started telling each other we could do that. And I've been telling people online, because by the end of 1218, you do not want to climb up that hill. Like, I don't care how much of the Milky Way you can see. I mean, we changed our itinerary and I saw a beautiful Milky Way picture on the group, but I didn't miss it at all. So that's a trick for people. If you don't like something or you think there might be a better match, give them a call and see if they can change it for you.
Yeah, they won't always change it.
No, they won't always, but
we asked in 22. I don't remember what the reason was, but it was apparently not a good enough reason because we were told no.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I know, everyone who's asked for the change on this particular itinerary has gotten it.
So as a blanket statement, I'd want to reinforce: don't call for trivial things. But if it's like a real, you've looked over and like, I just don't see how this is going to work, or you're welcome to reach out. But I talk to some of the folks in logistics fairly often, and they cringe every time anyone in the group says anything about being able to call and change itineraries. So I just want to kind of temper everyone's expectations.
Yeah, I can imagine. Don't go crazy, but
if you have a legit, really solid reason, I mean, they're good people who are going to consider what you're trying to do. But please don't go in with an attitude like you expect it, and get mad if they don't let you. They have parameters they have to work in.
Yeah, medical issues too would, reasons, so forth. Yeah, you're right, Jeff. They really cringe at that. But the comments, and I don't know where you guys were asked to put in your survey or comments. This is one of the things they look at over the off season, and that's why from year to year they tweak not each itinerary, but they tweak the itineraries based on, comments like yourself, Thomas, what you said, and so forth, that, hey, on paper it looked good, but when you hike it, it wasn't a great idea. And that's part of the reason I talked with the people in logistics, why this year they went from 35 to 24 itineraries on the 12th day, because there was itineraries that never got chosen. And they said, why should we have itinerary X if nobody's picking it? Or only 2 or 3.
Yeah, I got you. All right, we've got 25 minutes over our allotted hour. So still, if anyone has anything important you want to talk about, please speak up now. And otherwise, I do want to share something with people. Here is I'm about to upload a whole bunch of videos. So something that I have been doing, I clicked the wrong thing here. Something I've been doing for several months is chunking these discussions, these live chats down into shorts and sometimes the horizontal videos as well. So if you go to Camping Gear Report on YouTube, you'll see a bunch of clips of us having these discussions. Over the next month or two, you'll see clips that have come out of this specific chat that we've had. Oh, and I'm covering someone up. I'm going to swap. There we go. I moved Desi out from behind the Camping Gear Report logo. So those are going to be there. I'm also about to upload a bunch of videos that I shot. So what I did for a week at the end of June and early July was picked up some staffers. We rode around for a couple days and did things, but they only had 2 days off, so we had to take them back. And then the rest of us in my family, we toured around central New Mexico, and we ran into some really cool things. We spent a lot of time at national parks and state parks, and I am going to be posting some videos that y'all might find interesting, especially if you're able to drive in and you're looking for things to do along the way. I know I talked to one of the park rangers at Bandelier National Monument, which has some cave dwellings, and he had done Philmont a couple times, and he spotted a brand on my hat, and we got to talking, and he is now a member of the group and can answer questions. But they have like a 2-day hike that like a backpacking circuit that you can do there that looked like an amazing opportunity for altitude acclimation, getting your trail legs before you actually get to the ranch. And there are so many different parks and places in that region. We predominantly spent time from like Angel Fire down to Albuquerque in that area. And like, you can't throw a stick without hitting 2 national parks in that area. It's amazing, some of the different resources that are there. And I can't say enough, as someone who has had some altitude acclimation issues at Philmont before, I can't say enough about getting some time on the trail in the area before you start your trek, because that daily grind of day after day after day, if you have an issue, it can just beat you down. But you can do a day and then rest for a couple days to help get your acclimation kind of jump started if you can find yourself in that area a little bit early. So I'm super excited, and I'm going to have a ton of really cool videos from some of the different places that we went that go up that I think could be great places for crews to stop on the way in. And I think that's it for now. So let me get that page off of there. I want to thank everyone for being here on the panel. Amazing panel. This has been one of the most fun ones and most really good information we've had in quite a while. So thanks for that. Thanks for the grizzled veterans who have shown up. I want to throw a high five. I want to bounce a high five off of Desi back at Mark, because Desi said something about Indian writings. And I happen to know that Mark spent some time doing some heavy lifting at Indian Writings, working on the facilities there in the off season to make sure that they were better. So, and I saw his mouth move, but anyhow, thank you, Mark, for doing that. We appreciate all the folks that go out there in the off season and put some work in. So thanks. I think, I think someone must be misbehaving. I just got a note from one of the mods in the group that we may need to swing the band hammer. So I'm going to have to go check on that. But with that, I think we're done here. Is anybody not ready?
Icon.
Icon. Okay.
Icon.
All right. Bye, y'all.